everyone. I'm Reuben Stamper, and you are listening to the Manuscript Podcast. This is the podcast where we believe 21st century man controls his destiny, that his choices define his future, and most importantly, that he writes the script to his own life. If you get something out of this episode, please consider subscribing. I'm so happy to have you here with me today. Before we get started, a couple housekeeping things. First off, the next 2 weeks will be Manuscript Podcast episode less. Wow, that was a lot of words. There won't be episodes the next 2 weekends. I'm sorry. I hate to break the news to you. It's just not going to happen, and there's good reason. I'm getting married next weekend, which I'm incredibly excited about, and then I will be on my honeymoon the next weekend. So, yeah, I'm not going to try and force myself to get 2 episodes out there. I would have loved to have got it done. I tried to fit it in the schedule, but it's just not going to work. So I hope you all understand. I will be back in 3 weeks, so 3 Saturdays from now, we will have another episode up and on the air for you all. I really have loved doing this. We're on episode 9 now, so my hope is that we're going to make episode 10 a total banger. Like, everyone's going to freaking love it. We will see. We will see. I'll be working on that. But yes, in the meantime, know that the next 2 weekends, there will not be episodes of the Manuscript Podcast. But anyways, you're here for this episode, not to hear about future episodes, so let's get right into things. Today, we are talking all about why men need a area of their life in which they are competitive, where they can strive for competition. So let's get right into it. All right, so why should every man seek to be competitive in some area of his life? The short and easy of it is this: competition brings out the best in you. If you have an area of your life in which you choose to be competitive, because I'm not saying that this, I'm not talking about areas of your life where you're naturally competitive, whether it's, trying to get a new position at work because you're obviously trying to get that above someone else, or whether you are trying to impress a lady, you're obviously trying to say, you should date me instead of X, Y, or Z, I'm not talking about the natural areas of competition. Now, what I am talking about is a manufactured sense of competition, something that you choose to do, that you go into saying, I'm going to do my damnedest to win at whatever I'm doing in this particular area. And that will have a ripple effect into those other areas of your life where you may, naturally have to be competitive. But my point is, this competition that you choose, it brings out the best in you, and assuming you're going against an honorable opponent, it brings out the best in them as well. And so, we kind of live in an age where people like to hide behind this veil of not being competitive. And to be very clear, there are people who are just naturally competitive. Like, I've always kind of considered myself that way, but regardless of whether you find yourself to be like naturally competitive or just, not very competitive at all, I think it's important to try and excel in an area where you can compete against someone else in your life, specifically another guy. I think that is actually really helpful, and it brings a sense of adrenaline and excitement to your life that otherwise you won't really find in many other areas. And at the end of it, it allows you to feel a sense of accomplishment, or to understand, okay, I could do a little better in this area. So all in all, it's a learning experience, it's a growing experience, and it's worth doing. It's worth competing against other men. Now, the question may be in your mind, well, where do I compete? What's the area that I should choose to compete in? My answer, I can't answer for you, but I would say whatever you really like to do. So, if you are athletically gifted and you like sports, then there's a cut and clear answer for you. If you want to go be competitive, go play a game of pickup basketball and give it your all. And, I've done that at my local college sometimes, just gone up there and played some hoops with the guys, and it's really fun. I go against guys that are like 7 feet tall and just are super hard to play against. They make me play a certain way, and I have to really just kind of get physical, and it's super fun. And what I've found is when you give your all, the people around you, it kind of sparks this, it ignites this this fire of competition in the people around you. And they're like, well, damn, if he's going 100%, I'm going to go 100% too. And that's when you get the best quality of whatever you're doing, right? So if you're playing a chess match and you're being very competitive, your opponent is going to be very competitive as well, hopefully, and that will bring out the best play in both of you, because you're both like, damn, I want to win. Like, he made that next move, I got to do something better. And so you end up getting the highest quality of play in whatever game you may be playing or action you may be doing. And so, that's just yet another reason. It brings out the best in both of you, and it makes the experience the best it possibly could be. Now, I will tell you a couple quick stories real fast. Like, first off, there was a time a couple months back where I had this like little bit of a gap, basically, where I felt like life was going great, and I've been very blessed in so many different ways. But it almost was going too good, and I was like, man, I kind of miss a little bit of like that, like let's go do something crazy, like let's go just crush somebody, and like I think there's an innate thing in a lot of men that they get that feeling, where it's like, I need to compete. And I had I miss this kind of fire in my life, and I was like, where do I get that fire? Like, where does that come from? And personally, I found out that it was competition. It was like, if I haven't been pitting myself against other men, and so I haven't really been pushing myself to my limits. And so, you just have to adjust your life once you figure those things out. I think a lot of guys feel like that. They're not really, they don't really get fired up about a lot of stuff because they're not choosing to put themselves in those situations. And I'm not blaming you. I was the same exact way. And so I had to find ways to be competitive against other people who were also going to match my competitiveness. And so if you don't have an area of your life where you're choosing to be competitive in, I would just challenge you to try and find that, And so I already talked about like the sports idea. If you're athletic, you like playing sports, well then good for you. If you're not and you use your brain a lot more, here's an idea. Find a couple dudes who may have opposing viewpoints to you, who may disagree with you, and then debate, because that is incredibly competitive. When you have two different ideas, like on just the different sides of the aisle, and they clash, and you have to work out, okay, who's telling the truth here, that can be incredibly competitive. It can get your adrenaline rushing, and obviously, don't show your emotions too much, don't get overheated, but there is a bit of a fire that can come about when, like, no, I think my idea is right, and the other person's like, no, I think my idea is right. And obviously the best case scenario is when you guys can agree to potentially change each other's minds. That's always a great place to start when it comes to a conversation. Don't be so hard-headed that you'll never change your viewpoint. Like, be a little bit open-minded so that you can actually converse with their different points of view. So that's a competitive area of your life that you could choose to go into and say, hey, I'm going to sit down on a Friday night with a couple of my buddies, and we're just going to shoot the shit, and we'll probably come up with some topics that we want to discuss that we might disagree with, and then we're going to put out different points, and we're going to see who is actually telling the truth. And so that's a very competitive area of your life you can choose to go into. Yet another area is, like, as crazy as it sounds, like board games, chess, like I was saying earlier, those can be incredibly competitive. I just played a game of Risk with two of my cousins, and yes, I lost. They're probably laughing at me right now. I lost. But it was very competitive. I didn't go down without a fight. And if you guys don't know what Risk is, it's a board game where the whole point of the game is complete world domination. So your army is supposed to take over the entire world. So it's pretty dictatorial. You are really just trying to take over everything, and it's very cutthroat. Very fun game. Can get very heated, but it's competitive, and then there's a lot of strategy involved, and you're trying to look at what they might do and guess their next move. And so, very fun game. Gets very heated at times. But also, yes, another area where you could be competitive, or chess, whatever like type of games you like to play. And to be clear, with all these things, there is a time to not be competitive. I'm not saying that every time you do something, I'm not one of the people that would argue, oh, well, if you're not being competitive 100% of the time, you're doing life wrong and you're not a real man. I'm not saying that. I think that's a bullshit argument. What I am saying is that there are areas of your life that I think it would make you happier to choose to proactively go out and choose and say, I wish to do my absolute best in this area for the aspect of competition that would bring about. So, I've told you, my story about Risk. I will tell you a story real fast about my buddy Leo. So, I think I mentioned last week that I haven't been working out as much as I need to, or probably eating as well as I would like to. And so, I have a buddy who came in for my bachelor party last weekend. Great guy. I went to college with him, and we would lift together a lot of the time. We would work out, and we were super competitive with each other. It was super fun. And anyways, he came here a day earlier before my bachelor party, so I got to hang out with him for a full day. It was super fun. And one of the things we decided to do was like, hey, like for old time's sake, let's get a lift in together. That'd be fun. And we decided to make it kind of a game and make it pretty competitive. So we had like a circuit of exercises we would do. And this story actually is able to bring out a lot of truth in it. So that's why I want to tell it. So, Leo is amazing at a lot of exercises. I'm okay at a lot of exercises. And so it was funny because we had these different types of exercises in this circuit, and I would be really good at one, and he'd be really good at the other, and he was good at more than I was, for sure, because he's in better shape than I am, and that's a credit to him because he works out really hard in the gym, and he makes time for that. But it was funny because when I'd reach areas that I was like, okay, I know I have a chance to beat him in this area, I would push myself so hard. And he would do the same exact thing. I mean, we pushed ourselves as hard as we could down the stretch, but you get into these areas where it's like, oh, I think I could probably get him here, And so that kind of goes to a point that, competition, it helps you bring out your strengths, and you get to figure out, okay, where could I do better and where am I most likely to fail? And then, when you're in that competitive mindset, you actually just learn to lean into your strengths and do your best with your weaknesses, but understand that they are probably weaknesses. So it also, like competition, it teaches you something about yourself. And I just think there's a huge lack of competition, like fun competition in today's world. Like the Greeks used to get together all the time and have these giant like conclaves of just men that would come together and compete with each other. And it would make legends. You'd have stories created out of these things because people would do these incredible feats. Because why? Because they're going against a huge mass of men that's like, I want to be better than all of them. And they all have that mindset. And it really it made some amazing stories. But I also think that it was probably an amazing bonding experience. Because even when I play against like a pickup basketball team and I lose, if I've given my all, then, all I can do is shake their hands and respect them because they just fair and square beat the shit out of me. You know what I mean? And I'm not great at basketball, but I do like to, when I play, I really go all out. I've been labeled a sweat at times, It's like, why are you such a sweat? It's like, because I want to freaking win, Like, that's what I'm playing to win. And so, yeah, I guess competition, as an overview, brings out the best in your competitor, brings out the best in you. It teaches you about yourself. It shows you the weaknesses and strengths that you may have in a particular area. And also, one of the things I will harp on again and again when it comes to competition is this. It adds fire to your life. Like, you forget how fun it is until you become competitive again and you reach back into that bag. Because I think a lot of times, like, guys in high school, they kind of are just naturally competitive. Whatever it is, they're just like trying to elbow the other guy out of the way and like, yeah, like I'm gonna win. And then, at least for me, a lot of the times like that, there were things that I found out it was stupid to be competitive about, for sure. But I also, in a lot of ways, lost some of that competitiveness because I wasn't in the areas where I could partake in competitive things. And so, as men, if we want to live like an area of our life competitively, we have to choose to go to it. It's not just going to happen most of the time. It's really not. And yeah, so anyways, it will make great memories. It will teach you a lot about yourself. And most importantly, it will just add some fire to your life that you may be missing in a world that constantly is preaching comfort to you and like pleasure and all these things that kind of squelch this fire. They're like, oh, just be comfortable, relax. Sometimes as a dude, it feels good to not relax. Sometimes it feels good to be staring an opponent in the eye and saying, bro, I'm gonna beat you. You're gonna lose, and I'm gonna make this happen. And that can add just an element of adrenaline and just fire to your life. So don't neglect that part of who you are. Like, choose to be competitive in a certain area of your life. And if you lose, you lose. Try your hardest in that area, and you'll know that you went down honorably, okay? And you can do better the next time. So that's all I have to say on competition. I hope you enjoyed. Let's move on to the second part of the podcast. All right, everyone, for the second part of the podcast, we're going to be talking about a stat that came out about health after the COVID years. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think it is a great opportunity to look at the nature of man and say, okay, how do we respond? What is the best way to respond to adversity and to stay resilient? So, without further ado, let's get into this stat. According to an article by Dan Witters of the Gallup Institute, and this article was published December 13th, 2023, so very recent, health metrics in a post-COVID world have plummeted by significant margins. So I'll give you those margins. And to be clear, these are self-reported numbers, so most of the time when things are self-reported, they are actually, the answers are worse than they appear, because people like to be like, oh, no, I'm doing great in this area, when in fact they're not being objective about the answers they give. These are self-reported numbers with thousands and thousands and thousands of participants, so you've got a pretty good chance that there's some truth to be found here. So here's some stats. So obesity is up from 2019 by 6%. That's, 2019 was just 5 years ago, so it's up by 6%. These are self-reported numbers, by the way. So people saying that they ate healthy decreased by 5%. So these same people were asked since 2019 these questions, and one of the questions was, did you eat healthy yesterday? And they were asked that multiple times. And the answer was like, yes. But as we got farther in past COVID, the answer's been no. So that's decreased by 5%. And once again, self-reported numbers. And then also people self-reported not eating enough produce, so fruits and vegetables, by a margin of almost 8%. So that dropped almost 8%. People who originally were saying, oh, yeah, I eat enough fruits and vegetables. Now they're like, yeah, I don't. So how does this apply to manliness in the 21st century? Well, first off, let's just all admit the COVID years sucked so bad. They were terrible. I mean, they affected so many people in a million adverse ways. So I am not trying to belittle those years and say, oh, they were great. They weren't. Objectively, they sucked. And no matter where you fall on the political side of things, the COVID years just were the worst, okay? Everybody was a bunch of jackasses, and everybody was shut up in their home, so that probably contributed to a lot of these numbers. And the communication between people was shitty. We weren't seeing other people. It was terrible. It was terrible. So not a fan of those years at all. I'm not trying to say that those didn't suck. They did. But, and here's a big but, okay? How we respond as men matters. And that's why I'm bringing up this statistic, because the argument I'm going to make is you don't have to be one of those statistics. If you find yourself having, let yourself go a little bit because life was shitty and maybe you're a stress eater. I don't know. I know I am. Maybe if you find yourself as one of those statistics, you don't have to be that. You can choose to change. And this idea of resilience within man's nature that is, first off, very attractive to a lot of people. We should strive for it. We should try and become as resilient as possible. And so when shit happens in our lives, because it will always happen, there will always be things happening that you don't like, that you disagree with, that you feel like you've been given a really shitty hand and like God's spitting on you, like you get that feeling. Like it's that tough. You're in that season of life. You're like, oh, this is the worst. That thing is going to happen, most likely without anything you can do about it. It's going to happen. All you get to choose to do is how you respond. You get to say, what am I going to do as a man in this situation reacting to this terrible event that has happened? The loss of a loved one, whatever it is, as brutal as these things can be, you get to choose how you react. And it is a choice you have to make every single day. Like in this instance, staying healthy is like a choice you try and make every single day. And even though you were locked in your house and you couldn't see people and everybody's depression rates shot through the roof because of this, even though these things were happening, things largely outside of our control, all we could do as men is to step back and say, okay, what are the things that are in my control that I can change? And, this is, once again, the point of this podcast is a man writes the script to his own life, that his choices define his future. That's a big one, choices. Like, you get to make the choices that are going to change the timeline of your life and what that looks like. And so, my challenge is try and be resilient. If you find yourself being one of these statistics, then change. You can do it. I have the utmost faith in you. I still am probably working towards this as well, trying to become better in this area. But whatever the event is in your life, this is just one event where it's a couple of years of COVID, which sucked. Whatever the event is in your life, take a step back, take a deep breath, and then assess what you can do in that circumstance. That's all you can do. That's literally all you can do. Or you could just constantly point at the thing and say, well, that thing's making me do X, Y, or Z, and life is terrible, and it's horrible, and I'm never going to be able to get ahead, and this guy's holding me back, that guy's holding me back, and, all these outside things are affecting me. Or you can say, okay, all this shit's happening around me. How do I react? What is the best way to react? And then go and execute. Go react in the best way possible. That's all I have to say on the second part of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed. And I thought that was interesting. The stats that, okay, who would have guessed people got fatter and more unhealthy after COVID? Like, that's a pretty predictable outcome. But my point is, you don't have to be part of the predictable outcome. You can choose to live your life differently. So that's all I have to say on that front. Hope you enjoyed. Let's get on to the third part of the podcast, which is going to be a little nerdy today. Reuben Rants. Let's go. Credit card companies are scamming this shit out of us, and I kind of just found this out about a month and a half ago, and so I thought I would share this information with you. So, most of us who have credit cards, myself included, we like the idea of our perks, our little, our rewards that we get by using the credit card, by going through a particular company. You get like 1.5% back, 2% back. That's super cool, man. Yeah, awesome. That's what's kind of enticed me to get credit cards. Pretty cool, right? But where does the money come from? That is the question. Like, how are they able to afford giving me, if you pay on time, how are they able to afford giving you that money? Now, obviously, some of that comes from late fees that people, don't pay on time. But a very large portion of that money comes from what I'm about to talk about here. So, let's say you're getting 2% back on your credit card. Really cool. Really awesome. Well, there's an act right now going through Congress that would eliminate the credit card companies of MasterCard and Visa, which are the two monopolies. They are huge. They issue the most amount of credit cards through different companies. So they might you might slap on a Capital One label or a Fifth Third label or a U.S. Bank label, Bank of America label. They might slap those onto their cards, but it's their cards that are getting used, right? And they, as the two biggest companies, get to basically they put out the machines that companies use when they take your card. So, you have that little kiosk thing you plug your card into, and it's like, hey, okay, sign here or click enter here, or some of them are just press against and it'll read your card automatically and you've paid, and very fast transaction. So those machines, a lot of the times, only Visa and MasterCard can work on them. So these little tiny credit card companies that are wanting to get started, they don't really have an in for the most part. They're kind of ostracized from being able to get their name out there. And why are the big credit card companies doing this? That's the question. And this is what kind of blew my mind right here. So those credit card companies, for the merchant, so the person selling you the goods, right? So you go in and you want to buy a thing of milk. When you go to buy that milk, the credit card companies say, okay, whatever that milk costs, as a merchant, you have to give us between 1.5% to 3.5% of the sale price. So, you sell it for $3, then you're going to give anywhere between 4.5 cents to quick math, I'm bad at this. 13.5 cents to us, okay? Pretty crazy. And so what does the merchant do? Well, the merchant says, excuse me, we had to milk the cows, we had to put it in this container for you, we had to ship it from God knows where to get it into our store, and our margin is razor thin. We're not going to make a ton of money off of this when all is said and done. So what does a merchant do? They say, I'm not going to let that credit card fee eat into my profit. So I'm just going to make that product that much more expensive. So in a theoretical world, if these credit card companies didn't have these monopolies, all your consumer goods would decrease by anywhere between 1.5% to 3.5%. Now, I know this is taking into account, well, would the stores actually change that, with inflation, all this stuff? I know, but in theory, that is how it would work. Because all the stores are having to upcharge you 1.5 to 3.5%, so that they don't have their profits completely destroyed by these credit card companies. So I thought that was really interesting. We're always like, oh, okay, 1.5% back, that's cool, or 2% back, or airline miles, this is really neat. And once again, I'm not judging you guys. I have the cards. I mean, I do the same stuff. But there is an interesting stat I want to throw out real fast. So apparently, according to, where was it at? Yeah, lendingtree.com, only 70% of credit card holders actually use their rewards. So we use credit cards, to get these rewards, and then we don't use them. 70% of us don't. Now, maybe you're part of the 30%. Good for you. I am. I mean, they've got to be out there. There's 30% of them. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that 70% of credit card holders aren't even using their rewards. But it's weird to think that the credit card companies, if they didn't have such a monopoly, there would be more of a free market, so that you could, if you were a merchant, say, okay, this small credit card company, I will let them work on this machine, and they will charge me, 0.0025% of my net profit, or gross profit. So once you sell the milk, maybe I'm giving them 2 cents, but it's much better than, 13 cents. So there would be much more of a free market element, which could drive down prices pretty significantly. And that's why this act is going through Congress. And the reason I found out about this act is because I saw a commercial. It was really funny that kind of made me think about this and do a little bit more research. But the commercial was by a big credit card company saying, don't, call your Congress members, don't let this act go through, because it will take away your credit card rewards, which pay for important things like groceries. And then I looked into it, and in reality, if you didn't have the credit card rewards, and if you didn't have to have that crazy charge on the front side, all those things you buy at the grocery store or at whatever store you're getting a consumer good, they would drop by anywhere between 1.5 to 3.5%. So I thought that was really interesting. It just, the numbers, it's one of those things where the ad that I saw was just very misleading. Information was withheld that is incredibly important to the argument being made. And one of the reasons that I think this act is actually going through is because the Fed is looking at all the crazy stuff price-wise with inflation, the cost of living going up, these things, and they're saying, okay, we need to figure out a way to make groceries and just regular goods that people consume on an everyday basis, we need to find a way to make those go down. One of the ways we make those go down is by allowing merchants to lower their prices a bit, because they won't have to account for that decent chunk that they have to give to the credit card company just for being able to use their machines. So I know it was a very nerdy Reuben rant section, and probably one of my more intellectual ones. But I thought it was really interesting to look at, because we're kind of getting scammed a little bit. We're getting told one thing, but in reality, that thing is causing our groceries and our alcohol and our cigs, everything to go up in price. So, anyways, worth thinking about. I thought it was interesting. I don't know exactly how I feel on the act going through, whether I would like it passed or not. But I thought it was really interesting. This is getting brought to the public's view, and we're kind of getting to see a little bit more of how this whole system works. So, anyways, that's all I have to say. Hope you enjoyed the Reuben rant section, even though it was rather academic. Thanks. All right, everyone, that about does it for this episode of the Manuscript Podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching. It means the world to me. Once again, I will reiterate, there will not be episodes the next 2 weekends because I will be gone. But I do want to thank you all who have stuck with me for the last 9 episodes. There have been some good ones. There have been some shitty ones. That's the name of the game, I suppose. But you just got to keep on making them. And I've really enjoyed doing this. I hope that it has helped some of you in just even a smidge of a way. That is what this whole podcast is here to do. It is to help young men who may be struggling in the 21st century, and to help myself, to keep myself accountable. Like the more people that watch, obviously, the more I'm like, I need to really get my shit together. And so I will leave it at that. There won't be episodes in the next 2 weeks. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you got something out of this episode, please consider subscribing to the YouTube or the Spotify. It would mean the world to me. And have yourself a great day. Remember, there's a better life out there. Let's get after it.